The church needs to know that it's actually gaining ground, but it's gaining ground on the front lines where it shows up and the battle is hot. Do you know that we had a movement of Christians gathering in the heart of New York City, in Hollywood, in Seattle, and in Portland? And our believers were hit with tear gas, urine bombs, which is like urine in like little, balloon sacks being thrown at them. The police were actually not working to help protect because the city was working against the Christians. And you don't hear these stories, but you need to hear them. And part of my 7-mountain mandate is to find the courageous believers that are on the front lines of restoring the family, of the awakening church, of penetrating the mountain of education, of advancing in government, of standing on the mountain of media and entertainment, and of building powerful businesses that are generating the revenues for the grassroots army to fund the Great Awakening. And you can keep in touch with all these strategic developments and people like I'm going to introduce to you in a moment by going to lancewallnau.com/letter. lancewallnau.com/letter. Why? I do a 360 news analysis. We're going to be doing more of that, of what's happening in the world, what's happening with Donald Trump, what's happening with Ukraine and Russia. I mean, God does give to us the prophetic ability to know what's happening. And I think it's our responsibility for the prophetic alignment of God's end-time movement in the United States to make sure our voice is heard and our message is getting out. Go to lancewallnau.com/letter to get the strategic monthly update on what's happening in the news you're not hearing in the battle for the Third Great Awakening. Go there now. Thank you. Hey, welcome back to the Lance Wallnau Show. I have a very special guest. We talk about the 7 mountains a lot. And one of the key mountains that is central to where we keep coming back to is the family, because as the family goes, so goes the nation. And when you think about Charlie Kirk, why was he such a threat to the left? Why was he so high on the devil's radar? Because the under 30 crowd had a voice speaking to it, almost with a big brother's authority about, here's about how you live life successfully, and then to live life with freedom. He kept bringing the Word of God and Jesus Christ into the center of the conversation. And he was winning on the education mountain, where he took the ideas of conservative thinking into hot confrontation verbally with whatever view you've got. Come on forward. And it's kind of interesting, almost like Stephen in the book of Acts. They were not able to withstand or resist the wisdom or the spirit by which he spoke. And he did a lot of work. It wasn't all spontaneous. He studied and called people and got answers to questions. And there is a thing in the Bible called the wisdom of the just. John the Baptist came to bring the wisdom. Repentance, yes, but alongside of repentance comes the wisdom that comes out of it. The family mountain in America is the most challenging one for us, because you could target the church and go to a local church and say, well, the pastors need to do this or that. We need to do more of this or that. But the family's ubiquitous. I mean, it's a far larger and harder territory to try to create an impact in. And we have an expert with us who came into the battle having 5 children, lives in Portland, of all places, the epicenter of warfare spiritually. And she and her husband launched something which I thought was rather courageous. When I first met her, she was launching a Her Voice movement, kind of like what Charlie Kirk was for the 30-year-old and younger crowd. She has become, in her own way, to moms getting awakened and aware of what's going on with their children. And we have the Mama Bear movement came out of a lot of this. So let me bring Jenny Donnelly. She's a subject matter expert. Welcome back, Jenny. Good to see you.
I'm so happy to be here, Lance. Thank you so much.
All right. So for those that don't know you, where do we start? You have the Her Voice movement, which begins for the purpose of doing what?
Yeah. So Her Voice movement really started out as, and it still is today, a place where we equip the voices of women who turn around and disciple their families. It's really about freedom. I really grew up, if you want to put it that way, in the kingdom in business. And my husband and I had a great measure of success. And so we had a lot of people that said, how are you succeeding? And that was our opportunity really to say, well, there's some business things you need to know, but who you really need to know is Jesus. and you need to know his ways and his principles and his word. And that actually started a revival in our network, in our business. And so that organically spilled into retreats for women. Then they said, can we bring our husbands? Can we bring our kids? And next thing you know, we're doing family camps, we're doing family conferences. And what we've really realized is that the family unit is under attack. And that really led into saying yes to Don't Mess with Our Kids, which originally came out of Peru. You've talked about this several times on your show, Lance. But Peru, they really went after this whole gender ideology thing. And really what they were doing was they were standing for family and saying, we're not going down this crazy path of letting our kids be in the jowls of the devil. And so when we heard they were so effective at this, turning over 9 woke laws, they're the only Latin American country right now that doesn't have a single woke law. We felt like
and they kicked Soros out. They frustrated Soros's movement so much that he's funding a lot of this ideology where there are billions of dollars, which is why I'm always trying to encourage Christians to use wealth wisely in the ideological battle of public persuasion. And the LGBTQ movement comes at you from cartoons to classrooms to the aggressiveness of their public expression, so that it creates a trending phenomenon. A weird thing was going on with the transgenders. And Bill Maher was even saying it. He said, "What? Yeah, well, let's wake up here, folks. Why is it 20% of Gen Zs are feeling like they may be gender fluid? Now look at that compared to every other nation. Don't tell me that there isn't something weird going on in America that's creating that difference." And you run into it. It really is. It's a counterfeit family movement is LGBTQ, isn't it?
That's right. Well, really, when we started working with some gals that came out of LGBTQ, we get in some really great conversations, and we've ministered to so many, and they're just incredible people. A lot of them were raised in Christian homes. They have, some woundings and some things that Jesus can heal. But basically what we found out was they have a dynamic in family in the LGBTQ community that unfortunately is hard to find in the church. And I don't mean to kick anybody in the shins, because we are the church. I am the church. But I just started observing that if we don't do family the way the kingdom does family, the way the Bible explains family in the church, not just our nuclear families, but in the church, I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain revival, the revival that we're in right now. And so I'm just compelled right now. I've been doing some research on different family cultures. I've researched the Jewish culture, the African culture. I've even researched the Muslim culture. And the American family, our culture basically celebrates independent and individual fulfillment. And that's one of the problems that we have as Americans.
Wow.
Is we look at, like, going to a women's conference. I'm kind of going for my own individual encounter. I'm not even necessarily thinking about my family. I'm not thinking about my elders, the generations past. And I do women's conferences. So, but I've had to look at this and say, okay, God, how is it that we are going to revive the American family? Because when Charlie passed, we found out through a lot of different, commentary that really that was what he wanted to do. He wanted to revive the American family. And this begs the question, revive to what? Because if we revive the American family, and I believe that we have an incredible opportunity to do that right now, we can't revive it to the American model. The American model is, I've been raised to be independent. When I'm 18, I'm out of the house. I really don't need my parents anymore. What do they know? And so these generations are actually not even working together. The wisdom of the older generation isn't spilling into the next generation. And it's actually really grieving. So reviving the American family right now, we have to know what we're reviving it to. The other thing, and this is interesting thought, is I said, okay, God, this insanity in America, what is happening? Not only it's 1 in 3 Christian youth do not identify with their biological gender, Christian. Okay. And then we have these schools with shootings. And then we have, of course, what happened to Charlie. And I just stopped and said, this is insanity. What is going on? And I really felt the Lord say to me, it wasn't an audible voice. It was just impression in my spirit. But I heard these words: the remedy to insanity is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then I wanted to put a period right there. And God was like, no, I'm not done. It's the gospel of Jesus Christ lived out in family. And then it was, where else do you get an opportunity to forgive somebody 7 times 7 a day? And I just started seeing how, wow, we're going to have to learn how to do family instead of rejecting people just because they don't agree with us. Or, my sister, because she's a different denomination, she doesn't believe the same thing I believe. And I just feel like if we can enter into kingdom family template, I believe that we are going to have a harvest of souls that actually want to be with us and be a part of the family instead of reverting back to whatever counterfeit family they've come from.
You said a mouthful and a couple of things that really, I got a little hammer here. I feel like just hit me in the head when you said it. For instance, we do celebrate independence. What was the second thing? Our culture, the DNA of the American dream is you grow up and you're independent and you have personal fulfillment. But if you don't have a blueprint, if you don't have a moral order, which is where Charlie was so strong, God has to be in the equation or your freedom becomes anarchy. It has no definition to it. But you said something else I never heard before, which is 1 in 3 Christian youth identify as being gender fluid. Did you say that?
They basically don't identify with their biological gender completely. They won't say I'm 100% female or I'm 100% male.
Wow. I did not know that, and I think a lot of my audience is going to go, what? For real?
I think youth pastors across the board, it's about 13% of youth pastors actually have a biblical worldview. It's maybe 13%.
It's kind of, how do you keep from getting channeling frustration when you think about the states? 13%, which means the senior pastor doesn't have a priority. I just put it there. They're hiring youth pastors that can build the youth audience versus, actually disciple youth. And all right, but that's another subject which has to do with men. Men have a prominent role in this family thing because I got to hear a bunch of guys in my background going, it's about the fathers and about the men. So certainly the Her Voice movement was the natural, organic, wisdom of God biology, because the moms tend to identify more with protecting their little cubs than sometimes the fathers who are providing and, doing other stuff. Men are awakening, but I want to focus in on your movement with Her Voice. Maybe if we have time, we could talk about how the family model can better work. You're doing research on that. But let's go to the next question, which is, you and Pastor Russell Johnson, the Charlie Kirks, the reason why I always want to lift you up and bring you before my world is because there's tons of Christian conferences and Christian family events, and the devil isn't worried about that because it's rather narcissistic, if you don't mind me putting it, though. It's us focusing on us. The moment you cross over into listen, it's the ubiquitous world of influence. Our kids are not living only in their church. They're in social media. They're in TikTok. They're in Snapchat. And the LGBTQ community is so in creating community and dialogue in those insidious mechanisms where kids are sucked into conversations about things that they should be able to talk about with their parents or should be talking about in church, and they're getting clarity from other sources. I hate to break the momentum of this conversation, folks, but what we got to do is we've got to take a quick station break here for our various outlets, and we're going to be right back. There's a special relationship that a ministry has with the people that pray for it, support it, stand with it. And I've got a couple of hundred of you out there that I want to throw a party for. I got meals, party plans. Annabelle and I are going to be together. And I want to share with you the exciting inside story about the work that we're doing, work we do in partnership, organizations like Turning Point, like the White House Faith Council, and give you guys the insider update. What's interesting about this especially is, the meals, the resources, the whole event. We deliberately pared this thing down to the minimum cost possible, so it's only $350. I want you to be there. Go to lancewallnau.com/partner party. We'll see you there. All right, well, welcome back. Let's get into it. Jenny, keep going. Tell us what happened in Portland, what happened in LA, because you started moving out like Peru. Let's get the family out on the street. The gay pride parade is on the street. It's time that the American family had a voice. What happened?
Yeah, so we went to 5 cities, New York City, right there in Times Square, Miami, Houston, Seattle, and Los Angeles. And it, you know, every city was had a different dynamic. New York City was incredible. We had some of our protesters get saved, give their life to Jesus. We always actually set up an area for our protesters because we want them to be able to express their First Amendment right for freedom of speech as well. Not that violence is tolerated or anything like that, but it's also an opportunity for them to hear the gospel, right? We don't want to be an echo chamber and get outside and then just talk to Christians. We want to share the love of Jesus and the gospel, the good news of Christ with people who are not yet saved. And so it's very evangelical. So that was amazing in New York. Miami was great. Houston was beautiful. We had kids come out from the projects and we gave away bikes. We gave away haircuts, free haircuts for kids. And that was incredible. When we got to Seattle, we actually had a heads up that week before we went because our pitcher, Ross Johnston, and my pitcher, we were on, you know, the different Antifa sites and communist, you know, social media sites, and basically saying, we're going to make these guys pay for coming to our territory. And so we thought, well, this will be interesting, and didn't really know that what was going to happen. I mean, my goodness. But we got there and we were outnumbered. There was about 500 Antifa. You know, you mix in a couple other groups in there. And it immediately from the get-go, our meeting started at 5 o'clock. That's when the event started. We came in at about 10 a.m. to set up, and they were already there. They'd already painted, you know, the structures around the park. They'd already flyered the park that, you know, the week before, but they were there throwing urine bombs. There were the tear gas. There was all sorts of things happening. We had a knife drawn on one of our youth. But I'm incredibly proud of the church because there was such I mean, in that environment, you know, when it's like, whoa, there's a whole group of people that are furious at us and they're actually being violent now. And then there's us, you know, everybody had to choose a side. There was no neutral Christianity going on. And so what happened was you had unanimous worship, you had unanimous praying. We were interceding for them. We were actually praying for them, which kind of riled it up even more. And then the police asked us to please, you know, cut our PA system so that they could make arrests, so that they could be heard. And that all happened. They had about 28 people arrested. Now, when they were arrested, now, why were they arrested? For violence. But when they were arrested, they actually just got right back out. There were no charges against a single one of them. So there's a whole
There was
system
no charges. They're throwing urine bombs and they got tear gas and they're drawing weapons. And there was no prosecution.
No. No charges.
All right.
No.
You've got this is, I mean, this is mind-boggling. This was Portland, and and that was New York, and then you got Portland.
That was actually Seattle.
Oh, that was Seattle.
Yeah.
You could almost do a spiritual mapping conversation on what you ran into in these cities. I mean, New York had a little bit of, you know, you could actually reach the protesters. They swamped you. Where was it where you were swamped with 500? Was that Seattle?
That was Seattle. It was actually in the chop zone, if you remember back during the pandemic, you know, when they tried to make the autonomous zone. We actually put in a permit for Pike's Place. That's where they throw the fish, you know, the iconic area there, because we knew that tourists would be walking through. We wanted wanted to be able to reach those people. We were ignored. We've now found out that that's called denial by delay. It's actually a tactic to keep freedom of speech for Christians out of areas. And so what they do is they just don't get back to you, and you just kind of think, oh, it's the government. They're not answering their emails. They're not getting back to us. By the time they get back to you, you're kind of narrowed into this corner to choose whatever they put in front of you. And they
put you in a danger. They put you in a box where they could come at you and attack you.
Yeah, Cal Anderson Park. And the police were not notified we were coming until Thursday. We came on Saturday morning, and they were notified on Thursday, which meant they did not have enough guys and ladies. They did not have enough officers. So we were pulled aside. I was pulled aside at 3:15 after tons of arrests had been made. And the police said, are you in charge of this? And I said, I am. And he said, the group there said, you're going to need to shut down. And I said, well, the problem with that is we don't start till 5. We advertised at 5. We have people driving from all over the Northwest to come here. And we would like to extend this at least an hour into the actual event. And they said, well, we got guys getting hurt. And I said, I don't want any guys to get hurt. We do have a permit here, you know, and they said, well, we're going to have to call the mayor. And I said, okay, all right, call the mayor. And I said, meanwhile, while you work that out, I'll be over here. And I was just pointing to the stage, and I was just praying. I mean, Ross was on the microphone, Russell was on the mic. I actually didn't get on the microphone a single time. God told me, if you have something to say, I'll let you know. But I just interceded, quite honestly. It was intense. And so anyway, they didn't come get us, but at about 6:30, just because we want to give them our word, we shut down. And for that reason, that's why we're in litigation. That's why we're suing the city of Seattle. It's Liberty Counsel that's representing us. And basically, what happened there, it's something called heckler's veto. Of course, I've learned a lot since then, didn't even know what that was. But heckler's veto is when you have two groups that are expressing their First Amendment right for freedom of speech, and one group doesn't like what another group is saying, and so they get violent. They begin to heckle. And if the government steps in and shuts down the peaceful group, the nonviolent group, that's actually unlawful, and it violates the First Amendment law. It's called heckler's veto. And so that is really what we're presenting in this lawsuit. And then we have a whole nother story in Los Angeles the week after that. So
I got to hear it. So, all right, Los Angeles, what happens?
yeah. So Los Angeles, we're headed to Hollywood Boulevard the next week. We actually did not hear back from them. We were asking for months to get a permit, and they did not get back to us, denial by delay. A couple days prior to the event, we're thinking, what are we going to do? They're not getting back to us. And so they got back to us and they said, hey, we're going to go ahead and put you on a street. It's a couple blocks over from Hollywood Boulevard. We're like, why? Why can't we have a Hollywood Boulevard? And they did not give us an answer. Well, we ended up looking online to say, gosh, is there another event that we didn't see? And what we saw was that 1 week later from our event schedule, LGBTQ was having their pride parade on that very block that we requested. And they were rolled out the red carpet. They were going to be given everything they asked for, including, the stage, the beer garden, there were even city buses helping shuttle people into it. So they told us you can be on, it was a couple of streets over, I believe it was Hawthorne. They said you can take that street, but we're going to have to ask you not to sing because that's not First Amendment right. And you can't have water activities, which, I wonder what they're talking about. They're talking about baptism.
You can't have a water activity and you can't worship. In the LGBT, under the principality of homosexuality, you cannot preach the gospel, you cannot worship, and you can't baptize. So that tells you right away what we got to do more of, folks.
Yeah, exactly. So what we said was we got them the fire department, we got the parks department, we got the captain and the lieutenant of Hollywood. We got them on a Zoom. Ross and I did. And Ross let them know, just respectfully, we want to let you know that we are coming to Hollywood Boulevard, even though you haven't approved it. And we will be having human bodies block off the streets of Orange and Highland on that street for Hollywood Boulevard. We're going to do that under the protection of the First Amendment right, because we have a First Amendment right for freedom of speech. And we think it'll go a lot better if you help us. But, that's totally up to you. And so it was kind of crickets at that point, and they got off the Zoom. And we met, thank God for Victory Outreach Church on Hollywood Boulevard. Shout out to them, because we got 500 people in their church. Actually, they had to turn people away, but we said, we just did a call out. Will you guys meet us at this church? And we're going to come up with a plan to get on Hollywood Boulevard. And we did an altar call. And the altar call was, we need 30 people to come forward right now, and you will be the ones to block off Orange. And then we had 30 people come up. We need you to block off Highland. And, Ross Johnson, just shout out to him. It was like he'd done this 100 times. And people were like, wait, we're really blocking off the street. I'm like, we're really blocking off the street. So we went out all together. We had to make signs and all that because we needed to express our First Amendment right. We can't just, like you're in the lobby of a church, you can't just talk to each other. You actually have to have a message, for the First Amendment. So we went out, and our sign said, Jesus loves Hollywood. Hollywood will be saved. California belongs to God. Jesus loves you. All these beautiful things we said. There were nothing that was nasty, nothing that was dumb. It was all gospel, and it was really amazing. So we went out on the street. It took literally 5 minutes to shut down the street and then get all the cars out of the block, right? Because there's cars inside now trapped, so we have to get them out. And we just threw our sound equipment on the ground. We did not have a stage. We just popped it up on the ground. And it was the captain that came up and said, I'm gonna start making arrests. And he told Ross, it's gonna start with you. And Ross said, okay. And he said, you're gonna have to clear people off this street. And Ross said, sir, respectfully, we're gonna exercise our First Amendment right today. and we're going to tell people about Jesus. And he said, okay, well, how many of you am I going to have to arrest? And Ross said, a lot. And so he said, okay. And so he negotiated, we got to be there for 90 minutes and everything, we're supposed to do an event where we do haircuts for kids for 2 hours before. We have testimonies that never got to go up there. We have so much that we didn't get to do, but what we did do is we worshiped, and then we put a baptismal in the back of a pickup truck and baptized a lot of people. We had people come down from apartments up there in Hollywood Boulevard. One girl came down and she said, I saw you guys praying. I need prayer. And the people in my apartment were saying, those are the Christians. Don't go down there. They're praying. Don't go down there. And she said, I'm a lesbian. But I need prayer. So I came down here, even though my friends told me not to. Anyway, she ended up giving her life to Jesus, got water baptized. And so God did a great work in the middle of just, incredible things. But here's why we're doing the lawsuits. We're not doing this because we have nothing else better to do. The reason we're doing this, Lance, is because there is no way that we are going to give up territory for every other freedom of speech except for the gospel. Anybody should be able to go to Hollywood Boulevard and say, I want to worship kangaroos. I think I'll do that today. Whatever, we're not saying that we deserve special rights, but we want the same treatment as LGBTQ pride that was happening the very next Saturday. So we're doing this because we want landmark cases to say, you know what? We're not going to back down anymore. We're not going to be Christians that just get ran over and we get all intimidated by the government. No, we have a First Amendment right here. We're not doing anything illegal, and we want to preach the gospel. And we're going to do that in Seattle or Hollywood or Michigan or Florida. We're going to do that because we have a constitution that backs that up.
Who's handling your legal case right now again?
This is Liberty Counsel.
Liberty Counsel. Who is that, by the way, that's heading that up?
I don't know actually who the head of it is, but our attorney is Daniel Schmidt, and he's actually the one that represented Cheon when they sued Newsom. And they
Pastor
sued Newsom.
Cheon, right? So because he was going to lock him up and put him in prison, and $1,000 a day fine for everyone that went to church. Let's all remember that when Newsom is out, smiling away, running for president. All right, so you've got these two legal cases. First of all, I was smiling earlier because I love the courage that would go to like Seattle and Portland and New York City and LA and Hollywood. Thank you for doing that. How can people stay connected with you, and how can they support you in this courageous mission? And already, I'm thinking if we had more media coverage of what the left is doing, they would have a higher level of political self-interest in not letting, in this era especially, not looking like the way that they actually are, not undressing in front of media. So how can we help you?
Yeah, if you go to hervoicemovement.com, the best thing there is just to get on our email list, because we're emailing out all the things that we're doing, where we're headed, that kind of thing. But the other side of the coin is, we cast this big net to stand for family, and now we have families that really need urgent help, whether it's their marriage, whether it's parenting. And so we have a retreat center. It's what we do in our ministry is we equip the saints for the work of the ministry. We're helping heal relationships and marriages. That's really what we do. I mean, this thing on the streets was just something we just said, okay, we've got to do this for America. But what we do best is we help families heal and recover. And just, even if your marriage is amazing, go to the next level with it. And so look up what we're doing. We have actually, for the first time, His Voice Men's Retreat coming up in December. And so there's just a lot to look forward to in the healing of families, because I'm shocked, Lance, you said it already, but I want to echo this. When we came out strong in family, I mean, the devil was like so threatened, and it made me go, wow, this must be really the target. Because when families heal, and this is what God told me, he said, when families are restored, America will be healed. And so we want to go after family, and we want to go after healing and, family mission. Your family has a mission. Your family has a kingdom mission. And it's so important that you are on that mission. But sometimes we got some stuff we have to recover from and reconcile from. And so anyway, we would love to do family with anybody that's ready to do that.
Jenny Donnelly, I'm one of your big cheerleaders. I want to help get this message out. Thank you for joining us. I was told you got to bounce in 2 minutes, so I'm going to let you go. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Well, folks, that's the front lines. And the thing about the movement, which is our seven mountain focus, we have the political, we have the educational on the campus, we've got the family, we have to have the awakened church. It's funded by these awakened businesses that are prospering. You wonder where to put your influence, but look at how we need to have media. You're hearing this on media right now. So my encouragement to you is to get in touch with Jenny's movement, get in touch with her, and I'm glad to hear that they're going to have a His Voice men's retreat, and we're going to, I'll tell you what, I will do an interview on that when it's time. God bless you, and we'll see you again on the next Lance Wallnau Show.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.